What a very warm welcome to you guys. Hi, it's Kasim. I hope you're okay. I hope life is treating you okay. I've got another question here that I wanted to attack, which is entitled, Should I Stop Taking Creatine? But before we get into that, I've wrote down a couple of statements and a couple of quotes that I wanted to share with you, if that's okay with you. Here's what they say. Sometimes you make the right decision, sometimes you make the decision right. So that's the first one. Sometimes you make the right decision and sometimes you make the decision right. The second one is truly successful decision making relies on a balance between deliberate and instinctive thinking. Okay, so let's get into the question. I hope those two quotes are useful in some way. But as I say, let's get into this question. This question again was posted on the student room, and it is entitled, should I stop taking creatine after gym sessions? And this is what this person HH1209 says. I regularly have one scoop of creatine after a gym session. I am a 16-year-old turning 17 in a couple of months. Is it harmful for me and should I stop? I regularly go to the gym 3 times a week, and during the 3 month summer holidays, I will go 4 times a day. My aim is not to be a powerlifter, but to be fit and relatively strong. I don't aspire to be super strong or a heavy lifter. And that is a question that this person asked. So I've reflected, I've thought about this question, and I just wanted to share my thoughts with you. Remember, these are just my thoughts. I'm not a clinician, I'm not an expert. I don't consider myself to be the know-it-all. Ultimately, as I've always said to everybody, you don't want to be a sheep, you don't want to be a follower. You ultimately want to make the ultimate decision about what you should and should not do in your life. But I made down some notes that I want to share with you. Hopefully, they may be of some value to you. Okay, number one, um, look at what your instincts are telling you. Part of the reason why I shared that quote with you, which Malcolm Gladwell actually said, which is truly successful decision making relies on a balance between deliberate and instinctive thinking, is because so many of us in life we prioritize the advice of other people and we dismiss what's going on for us. We dismiss what's how things are looking for us, right? And in fact, one of the things that I wrote down here is have a look at the results. Have a look at how taking this much creatine or having one scoop of creatine after a gym session, how it's affecting you. Do you feel good? Is it working? Isn't it working? Um, uh, One of the things that I truly believe, and I've said this on multiple occasions, and it's one of my life philosophies, is that every single one of us should go through a coming of an age period in our life. And really, this coming of age kind of moves as we go through different periods in our lives. But this coming of age is a period in your life where you begin to question stuff. You begin to think about what is right for me, what isn't right for me, what's my leaning, what isn't my leaning, what do I like, why don't I like, what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And you are at the moment in a period where you are starting to look at that because you posted this question online. And so you're starting to think about what's good for me and what isn't good for me, right? I have this belief, and I wrote it in my first book, The Best Kept Secret, which is that every single one of us, we have two dreams in life. We have the first dream that we have is a dream that our parents have for us. That dream is usually born before we're even born, right? That may be the dream for us to be a boy or a girl, to be into sports, to be a Liverpool fan, into basketball, to be maybe our parents might want us to be a twin, or they want us to have certain values, or they want us to be a Christian or be good at piano. And our parents' dream is supposed to sustain us until we get to a certain age. This age will be different for different people, where we eventually, essentially, divorce our parents' dream and marry the second dream that we have, which is our own dream. Now, that dream is something that sometimes might have to be realized. It's something that might have to be built. It might be something which is instinctual because, someone like Beyonce knew from a very young age that she wanted to become an entertainer, right? But some of us, our dream or our purpose or what we were supposed to do in life or find what where our place is might not be activated because we need experience. So, for example, for me, I never knew that my job was to try to help men until I went through loads of difficult experiences in my life. And I needed to go through those experiences and I needed to fail and suffer and really, really struggle because it's allowed me to be empathetic. It's allowed me to be able to share my experiences from loads of broad perspectives, and be able to relate to a variety of different people from very extreme circumstances. And had I not gone through those, I truly believe that I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So you're going through this coming of age period, and what I would share with you is you're getting to that stage where now where you've read stuff online, which is probably or you've been influenced by other people beyond and outside of yourself, which is, I'm guessing, is how you ended up taking creatine. But now you got to start thinking for yourself and you got to start thinking, does it work for you? How does it show up? How does it make you feel? Instinctively, what is your instincts telling you based on what you're experiencing? For example, for me as Kasim, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, but me as Kasim, I don't take creatine. I don't take it because for me personally, as a person, I don't want anything that is artificial, um, uh, to affect my body. That is not an absolute necessity. So, for example, I would currently where I am now, because I was going to say I would never, but you never know, right? Things can change. But currently where I am, I'm in a space where I would not take performance enhancing drugs. Why? Because I don't want to get to the top of bodybuilding or sports, and therefore some people take it because they want to or they want to try it, but it just doesn't mean anything to me, right? Some people, for example, in the gay community, take poppers because it might enhance their sexual experience. I've never taken poppers because it's just not something that I would do, right? And it's just not personally as Kasim. It's just not. I don't want to take things when I can naturally achieve something, and that the natural way, but that doesn't mean that it's bad for other people or it's not right for you. My point being is you want to begin to really think for yourself. Don't be a sheep. Don't be a follower. Actually participate in making decisions in your life and start looking at what's showing up for you. That may mean doing some research. And one of the pieces of advice that I would share with you is, again, you don't have to follow my advice. You should do what feels right for you, is look at people who are ahead of you. Look at people who are taking creatine, right? It's not that difficult to find people online, right? And look at their life. And in fact, one of the things that I would recommend to you, and it's going to touch on something that you said earlier later on in your thingy. You said that I don't aspire to be super strong or a heavy lifter, right? So that tells me something about your philosophy. It tells me something about, as in your philosophy for health, your philosophy for the gym, which is really important. The word philosophy simply means a conclusion, right? A foundation that you set your life on. So some people's philosophy is, I will never lie no matter what. So even if their lie is going to hurt somebody or break up a marriage or something, some people will always tell the truth. But some people, if it's a white lie or if it's going to break up a family, some people wouldn't say it. But some people, their philosophy is, I will never lie no matter what. And so I love the fact that you've already started to think about your philosophy about, in terms of your health and vitality. And you've started to develop your own philosophy about gym, right? Because each one of us has our own philosophy. And if we don't have our own philosophy, then we'll usually take on the philosophy of somebody else. So one of the things that I was going to say to you is, start exploring who you'd like to be like. Who do you aspire to be like? Because you may find that now, you may not know the answer to this question, but you may be finding that many of the people who you're watching on YouTube, many of the people who you're watching on Instagram, or who you're following, or whose videos take your attention, many of those are people who have lifestyles which are not really similar to the sort of person you want to be, in which case, that also gives you an indication. You remember what Malcolm Gladwell said? He said that truly successful decision making relies on a balance between deliberate and instinctive thinking. So I've talked to you about the instincts, but you've also now got to look at deliberate. Deliberate means you've got to do your research. You've got to look at people who've already got what you want or desire. And I would recommend to you that you look at both the positive and the negative, not just the negative and not just the positive. And a huge amount of it is make a decision for yourself. Do you remember the first quote that I said? Sometimes you make the right decision, and sometimes you got to make the decision right. There is no such thing, technically speaking, as far as I've found, as the perfect decision. Every single one of us is going to make a decision, and we could have made another decision, right? There is another parallel universe where we would have made 10 types of different decisions, which would have led our life down a certain path. And sometimes you've just, even if you make an error in judgment or things don't work out, the great thing about human beings is that we can change, we can rectify, we can go another direction, or we can stop. So right now you may be taking creatine and you're like, actually, Kasim, based on what you said to me, I'm going to try for the next 6 months not taking it and let's see what shows up for me. Or you might say, actually, I'm going to take 2 scoops. And I'm not saying do this, by the way, either of these. I'm just saying this is something that you have to make for yourself, the decision you have to make for yourself. Um, and you're going to try it and see what happens. And you might go down 6 months down the road and or in the summer holidays, and you're like, actually, Kasim, nah, it's not for me. Or actually, Kasim, this does work, and I'm going to stick to this. But ultimately, what I'm trying to say is make the decision for yourself, both by looking at your results, looking at people who've already got what you want, studying the people who have the lifestyle that you want, right? If you're somebody who is involved in sports and you at some point down the road would like to get to a very high level in something, whether it be golf, whether it be badminton, whatever it is, then you might want to consider whether this is going to be a good choice down the road. And this is, do you see what I mean? When I start saying that you've got to weigh this stuff up and nobody can make these decisions for you. Nobody can tell you what is right or wrong because ultimately the only person who really knows what is right or wrong for you is you. The second thing that I wrote down here is everything is harmful in 2 different ways, right? One of the questions that you asked in your post is it harmful for me and should I stop? There's 2 parts to this question. The first part is it harmful? And the reason why I put this is that anything is harmful in 2 different ways. The first way is the extreme, is anything taken to the extreme, and the second is if it's not meant for you or isn't meant for how you are designed. So let's look at the first bit. The word abuse, right, is there for a reason. When you abuse a drug, when you abuse something, you have to remember that the first part or the let me rephrase that. You have to remember that the word abuse also means that there is a use, right? So, for example, cocaine, for example, morphine, for example, weed. Weed, if you extract it correctly, can be medicinal. It can really help a lot of people who have things like arthritis. Morphine can be used in a hospital for people who are having operations, right? Or who are being put under to have a major surgery, whether that's a heart transplant, they have a brain tumor or something like that. But like anything, if you misuse it or you abuse it, then of course it's going to end up having negative consequences. And so part of your role in your life, because it's your life and ultimately you've got to decide what's right for you and what's not right for you, is you've got to look at whether you are abusing something on 2 factors in terms of are you taking it to the extreme? And the second aspect of it is it meant for you in the way that you're designed, right? Extreme means, remember, everything has to be weighed up. So you've got to look at, for example, I don't know, if you are a 5'7" guy and you weigh, I don't know, 65 kilograms, is it really a good idea for you to be eating 10,000 calories a day? Probably not. Why? Because yes, eating is important, but you're taking it to the extreme, right? And everything has to be weighed, and the decision has to be made in taking all the different factors of who you are as a person. So, in the same token, when you're looking at creating, and I know this all sounds so overly complicated, but this is when you're making these sorts of decisions, you got to think about this kind of stuff, and you got to try to make a decision in this way. This is how I personally make decisions, right? You might not agree with me and you might not make decisions like this, but this is how, remember, I can make these decisions very spontaneously and very quickly. I can think of all of this stuff in a matter of seconds based on what I know, based on what I've read, etc. And if you start thinking in this way as you get older, you're going to be able to make quicker and quicker decisions. And remember, when you're wanting to be successful, the person who is able to make decisions quickest has an advantage in terms of success. And so you want to begin to look at, based on how you're designed, based on what your instincts are telling you, based on what you've read, right? And you're balancing and putting everything that you know about yourself, what works, what doesn't work. How does it show up? Is what I would share with you, is what I would share with you in the first part. And the second part that you ask is, should you stop? Should I stop? You should do whatever you want. Is the answer, is the honest answer. People can tell you what you should and should not do, but people don't know because they don't know every aspect of your life that you have to consider in order to make a, what is it that Malcolm Gladwell said it? Uh, a, a a deliberate and in instinctive thinking. In order to make that deliberate and instinctive decision, you're gonna have to know a little. Most people are not gonna know a lot about you and all the parts to you. So the ultimate decision has to come from you. Nobody can really tell you. The only time where the world is gonna intervene is where you've taken something so extreme that you've either are a danger to yourself or you're a danger to other people or you've broken the law in some way, right? I say to people that there are two things that people on this planet, particularly in the Western civilization, expects of you. One, pay your taxes, and two, you can do whatever you want as long as what you want doesn't, you don't take it from other people or stop other people from getting what they want, and it doesn't harm anybody. As in, you don't kill anybody to get what you want. If you exchange what you want with someone else, if you pay for it or something like that's fine. Nobody cares about that. But pay your taxes and basically don't kill other people, stop other people getting what they want in the pursuit of what you want, unless it's fair. Beyond that, everything else is kind of free for all. The rules change, and there is dynamics of money and power and status. So those things have to be weighed up on loads of different things. And the only person who can ultimately make that decision is you, mate, is what I would share with you. The other thing that I wrote down here is, I love the fact that you've prioritized your health. I love the fact that you're going to the gym at 16. 16 going on 7, because you're going to be 17 in a couple of months. I think is such an impressive age to be starting to think about the gym, to be thinking about your health, to be aligning yourself so that you can show up in terms of your vitality, in terms of your physique, in terms of your energy, right? You can show up at your optimal, fully charged, because if you are going to attack life and you're going to live the most remarkable life with vitality and vivaciousness, and you want to connect with people, it requires energy, right? One of the things that I hear from people who aren't successful and who don't have what they want is they say all the time, "Oh, Kasim, I'm tired." Or people, I meet a lot of people who haven't achieved their dreams and they're depressed. And one of the things that they always complain about is that they don't have the energy. So the fact that you're starting to think about your health, and you're starting to think about your philosophy and you're asking questions, let me just tell you, I think is such an impressive way to be starting your life, or certainly your young adult life off. I just wanted to say that to you, by the way. Um, I also love the fact that you are starting, and I've already touched on this, but you're starting to develop your own personal philosophy. Remember, philosophy is a conclusion, right? You say, I don't aspire to be super strong or a heavy lifter, which means you've started to think about it. You've looked at people and you thought, oh, I don't really want to be that, or oh, that doesn't really work for me. I love that. because that says something about you. That tells me you're a thinker. That tells me you're somebody who wants to be independent and you're analyzing. A lot of the reason why I'm saying this to you is a lot of people don't recognize and realize that you do not have to experience everything in order to make decisions about whether you should do it or not, or whether it's right or not. You can take advice and observe other people and then move forward. And I've got to tell you that a lot of people don't do this. A lot of people, what they try to do is that they want to simply use their own experience, right? And so everything ends up taking double the amount of time. They fail unnecessarily. And I just love the fact that you're starting to think about this sort of stuff. So I'm going to finish there. I don't know whether that has been useful. I don't know whether that has added some value to you or answered your question, but I hope it's in some way helped you. Um, Comment below, send me a message, all that fancy stuff. I don't need to tell you what to do. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.